to sit in and sit in on several of these sessions. I've learned so much from all of you amazing, beautiful, powerful Filipina sisters. So thank you so much. As a small business owner, this is coming at a really important time for me to really reshift and to think about how I'm moving forward with my business and how I'm including everything that I am and everything that I've worked towards to crystallize into something to take us into the new world. And plugging into this community has really reminded me that moving forward is to do so with community and with others. And that time of being alone and being, oh, I've got this on my own, that survivor mentality that one of the presenters was mentioning today. I think that time is sloughing off of us like dead skin, and we're right now kind of scrubbing off and seeing what we're becoming. So
Yes.
I'm really, really happy and grateful and honored to be a part of this. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Kiam. Okay, so we are on YouTube now, so I'm just going to give you the floor to go ahead and.
Do I do the share desktop?
There should be a green button below you that says share, and then it'll allow you to choose this.
I think this. Let me see if that's the one. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Let me see if I full screen this. Why is it not working? Apologies. View full screen. Let me do that. Okay, here we go. All right. So once again, thank you for joining me all. My name is Kiam Junio. I am an interdisciplinary artist and a holistic healer in Chicago, Illinois. A little bit about me. I grew up in the Philippines. I lived there till I was 10. My mother was an overseas Filipina nurse who passed away when I was 6 years old. And between 6 to 10, I lived with several different relatives, kind of being passed around family to family, until when I was 10, when my mother's sister, my aunt, was able to adopt me and have me to live with them and her family in Japan. My new family, my parents now and my sisters, really showed me at that young age how family has your back and will take you in, even though on a personal level, I had always felt like I was all alone and between worlds, right? After high school, I ended up joining the military following my father's footsteps. I was a US Navy hospital corpsman for 7 years, where I served in an oncology ward as a medical assistant for half of that time, and then as a respiratory therapist my last half of my career. After my military time, I knew that I wanted, like being in the military, I continued to practice art and to hone my identity and to understand who I am from the inside. And I knew that the next place that I had to be was in art school. And so I separated from the military in 2011 and I moved to Chicago to become an artist, to study art and become an artist. Along with that, I've also kind of bounced around from different healing modalities and different interests in the healing arts. I've been a yoga teacher. I am currently, up till this current crisis, a licensed massage therapist, practicing several different modalities. And I've also attended a year of acupuncture school before realizing that that wasn't quite where I was wanting to take my life and to take my journey and to crystallize what I've been working on. And this new program through the same acupuncture school opened up, which is a Master of Science in Health and Human Performance. And I'm currently in my first semester of that school. So that's kind of my journey in a really quick maybe not so quick way through my healing journey rather. And alongside with that is also my artistic practice. I am a visual and performance artist. I make fabric sculptures. I have a Filipino cookbook, a vegan Filipino cookbook that I produced in 2014. I create sculptures and photographs and performatively use my body as a vessel to communicate lessons, thoughts, feelings that I feel that I'm channeling from the whole creative collective. And this is not only my passion, this is my mission, this is something that I know that I was put on earth to do. And my connection with my art is always grounded through my relationship with materials, through the earth itself. And and this is another timeline of what my life has looked like, growing up as an only child between families and between genders, feeling like I wasn't quite a boy and I wasn't really a girl either, and yet finding comfort and finding solidarity with the women in my life, with the girls in my life, with the femmes in my life. So that has always felt like home, even when I was in the military, living in this hypermasculine world and role and culture. I knew that I had my home to go to, which was my internal yin feminine perspective and vision and soul self. And moving to Chicago and coming to contact with communities of color, of vibrance, um, of such magical talent, it has really revolutionized how I see myself and how I act in the world, and how I act and produce and create in the world. Um, all right, and that leads to what I'm crystallizing now, which is Mahal Healing Arts, and it is a holistic wellness practice dedicated to providing healing experiences to clients and communities. And this is my vision right now, and I'm in this process where the pieces are still forming and coming together, and I'm utilizing my skills in my previous jobs and interests, and really working on building this business as something that can sustain and will create that generational wealth and abundance for myself and for the rest of society as we move forward in these times. As we are all probably familiar with, mahal is a word in Filipino that has many meanings, including love, as well as expensive, valuable, precious, and dear. And the roots of this word also includes meanings such as a resting place or a hall, a palace, your home. And when I intentionally chose mahal as the word on which my practice will stand, I wanted to bring forward all of these meanings to help individuals to find comfort in their own bodies and a resting place in their minds, and to see their experience as valuable and 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 yes, and our very being as a palace of great wealth and value. Um, I think there was, should I look at the chat? I'm sorry, I can't see the chat while
Sorry, Kiam, they were just comments. You don't have to.
Okay, I will get to those though after the presentation, if that's okay. Let me go back. I want to engage with people. I do, but yes, that's continuing. Mahal. My one-on-one offerings include holistic life coaching, massage therapy, and personalized aromatherapy. Obviously, massage therapy is something I can't do right now, and that has been the biggest source of my income until now. And so I'm now at this point where I'm learning to, and I'm paying attention to all of the different lectures and trying to, and figuring out how I can pivot my business to propel myself and other people around me. Okay. I also create Mahal Potions, which are a line of aromatherapy and self-care tools made with all natural botanicals, including mostly essential oils, carrier oils, and I create these potions to kind of target different chakra systems and to provide people with a beautiful sensory experience, you know, down to the packaging and the feeling of the product actually going on your skin, and to have this, to build this relationship with plant medicine and plant material and the intelligence of the essential oils and the the beauty that the beauty and the healing that they provide for us. Um, I feel that my art practice is really kind of morphing into this form, and I'm really excited to see how that continues to develop. I also I made this the store 2 days ago to um, have another way to work creatively, and I created some products that are now available um, as future sources of income, hopefully. And okay, let me take a moment and get some water before I continue, kind of reset. So this is all still really new to me, being in front of the camera and projecting my voice to an audience. I've always used my body in silence or in song at times to express myself, but speaking my knowledge is still something really new to me. So thank you for your patience as I'm working my way through this. But onto you, actually. Let's talk about Ikigai. And these are some of the concepts that we'll be learning today, a little bit about traditional East Asian, specifically Chinese cosmology, and how the five elements work with one another, how they generate and give birth to one another, and how they also control one another in this cycle. And then we'll learn also about a little bit about the acupuncture channels and some coaching questions that I like to ask my clients regarding the five elements and how to apply that in their life. And then we'll wrap it all up with combining this model of the Ikigai and the five phases. All right. So this is the Venn diagram that Anna Marie was referring to earlier. This is something I found posted outside of a bathroom in Hawaii a couple years ago. And I was looking at it and I was really enjoying this idea of, wow, there's this place where you can land where it meets all of your needs, and we can avoid falling into these traps of uncertainty and emptiness and uselessness, right? And so, and it, because it made me wonder, why is it that people tend to fall into these traps? And I realized that looking for that purpose, looking for that one thing that fulfills all of your needs is inherently a dangerous quest, because you could fall into any of these traps. And so I thought there might be another way to look at this, where we're not excluding things and we're using, and where we are able to position ourselves to be able to do things that we're good at and that the world needs and that we can be paid for and that we love, even if it doesn't even if one thing doesn't meet all of those criteria, I imagine that there's still ways that we can attend to these different aspects of our lives and somehow create a balance out of it. Um, and so I thought of that, and then I kind of lost that thought for a while. And we're gonna come back to that because we're going to learn about cosmology. So cosmology meaning the creation of everything, the source of everything, or the beginning of everything. And if we take ourselves from our physical vibrational reality and move up another layer of vibration, we can be in the thought realm, right? And the thought realm is a place where we have access to, and we have access, and other people have access to as well. And then above that, we can imagine being in the emotional realm. And then above that, perhaps in the spiritual realm, where our borders are non-physical and we are truly equal with one another. And if we...
Sorry, is there supposed to be something on your screen right now?
No, there isn't.
Okay.
Yes. And so if we move even in a higher vibration to that, we can consider the space where everything is everything and nothing is everything, and everything is coexisting as one and not existing as nothing at the same time, right? So it's a space where ideas and matter and emotions fall apart, and it's just pure being and non-being. So we can call this God, we can call this source, we can call this the divine, whatever you want to name it. And this is the first state of things. And within that, we can then envision a light, a spark, the consciousness beginning, the beginning of time, the Big Bang. Um, the first day when God made creation, right? So this we can also look at as the observer and the observed. And if we zoom in, then we have these two fields of light and shadow, or light and dark, consciousness and matter, these different polarities and different spaces to look from and to experience through. And truly, these fields aren't distinct like so. They're really more a gradient, one in the other, with no real perceptible delineation between them. And another way we can look at it would be the yin and yang symbol. Both parts coming from and containing one another, right? So this as the fundamental truth that on which everything and nothing rests. So if we split that up, then we have yin and yang as different fields or different goalposts, we can say. And these refer to the different polarities that we experience through our life, sun and moon, internal and external, pushing and yielding, upward and downward, different opposing directions, opposing perspectives and places. And so between these two poles, or between these two goalposts, is a field through which all of that exchange happens, right? There's the extremes, and then there's the gradient or the spectrum. And in that spectrum is what we could call chi, or energy, or vapor, clouds, fart, gas. They all mean the same thing. And that is the force that exists and reverberates between the polarities of yin and yang as it's moving and giving rise to each other. And in that field of chi is all of existence, all of living material, all of the animals and plants and human beings, all of thought and emotion and everything that we experience. And if we kind of distill down this movement that happens between yin and yang, we can come up with a model somewhat like this. And does that look familiar? I hope so. And um, in the ancient Chinese, they identified these different forces as different directions of energy or different movements of energy. One is an upward rising energy, one is an expanding outward, another is condensing inward, and then collecting inward. And then there's the middle where things are centered and balanced and transformed into one another. And the names for those are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. So these refer to directions or qualities of energy, and much more that than actual distinct material. The distinct materials that we are familiar with are essentially the avatars for these universal forces. So one model is to look at it as a diagram between, you can consider this more yang, this is more yin, or you can also view the elements as a cycle. And this is more their relationship with one another, and how one element then gives rise or gives birth to another, to another, to another, to another. They are mutually giving rise to one another. They are, however, also distinct qualities. So an example for the human consciousness, emotion is one thing, the spirit is another, consciousness is another, health is another, and will is another. However, we are all one being experiencing all of this at the same time. Another way to look at this is the cycle of birth. So birth to growth to change, decline, and death. This as a cycle that continues on and on. And another example we can think of is the cycle of the seasons. From spring, then comes summer, and the center of the year where the weather is perfect and you don't want it to change, which around the late summer before things start to cool down and concentrate again and condense in energy. And finally into rest, the rest and the peace of winter before the cycle begins again. So starting with, we'll go through the elements, starting with wood. Wood is a rising type of energy. It's about movement and excitement, new ideas sprouting forth. In the body, it's governed by the liver and the gallbladder. And in the traditional Chinese medicine system, there are two organs that belong to each element. And one is a yin organ, which is something that's a substance, something that's material and thick and has density. And then the yang bowel is more of a space where things flow through. So along with wood, the central themes are growth and movement. And in my coaching practice and in my aromatherapy one-on-ones, the question that I ask regarding this element to clients is, what is rising or coming up for you? And what is keeping you from growing into your full potential? And these would speak to how the element of wood is being utilized through you, or is being blocked, or is being nourished or undernourished. And these questions could kind of spark those self-assessments. The next element or phase is fire, which is about outward expansion. It's also about intimacy and connecting with others and wanting to grow a community of bright, shining flames all blazing together, right? In the body, the fire element relates to the heart and the small intestine. also to the tongue and the action of speaking and communication, um, which then leads to the expression and the intimacy, which are the central themes of this element. And the coaching question I like to ask for fire is, what within you is yearning to be seen, to be heard, and expressed? So by meditating on this and thinking, are you able to express everything that you need to? Then perhaps you have a healthy fire constitution at this time. But if you feel that you're being blocked and you're unable to really connect and to share with others, then there's some type of blockage happening in the fire of your constitution at this time. Earth is the center, the point of balance and transformation. It's what holds things together. It's the core of the earth that pulls through gravity everything towards it. And it's what keeps things moving and transforming and churning. In the human body, it's related to the organs of the spleen and the stomach, which are related to which the functions of which are to transform and transport the food that comes into our body and using that, transforming that into usable materials for the rest of the body to use. The themes of Earth are balance and transformation. So what keeps you centered? How would you describe your core? Is it a hard, dense material, or is your core made out of cotton candy and clouds? And by thinking this, we can kind of tune in to see where we are and what we need for that to function and continue these processes of transformation in our lives. The next element or phase is metal, which is a downward condensing type of energy. Think about when fall happens and school starts again. At least that's how I experience it being a student. And there's something that changes with your attention where it begins to focus and to distill and begin to remove the distractions, hopefully, and to hone in and focus on a goal, on whatever you're working on. And evolutionarily, this was also for our ancestors then a time to take stock of if they're going to be ready for the winter, right? Now, speaking about this from, I guess, from a north and south, summer, winter binary, and also I'm sure there are ways to apply this to our own personal ancestors in the Philippines with not having that polarity in the seasons, but there's still that need, and that mental activity would still be that part of the year where you assess what's going on and you take a look at your stores and to eliminate what's unnecessary. In the body, the metal relates to the lungs and the large intestine, which deal with governing the chi, the vapor, the air that enters our body. So using that also as material then for the continuing functioning of all of the systems. And then the large intestine, which eliminates what we don't need. And the central themes for metal, I consider, are concentration and refinement. So some questions would be what's coming into clarity for you and what's being eliminated in its place. And the final phase or element is water. And that is the end of the cycle. That's where we return to the source. That's when we rest in our knowing and being and comfort and safety before the cycle begins again. And in the body, the water organs are the kidneys and the urinary bladder. And they also relate to the brain and the spinal cord, which are the first parts of the human body to develop in the fetus and contain the materials for everything else to emerge. So it's the seed of life, and that's the seed and the source of all um, is considered in the contained in the water and the water phase. The central themes for water are collectivity and rest. So questions, what are you containing or keeping in reserve? And how are you honoring your connection to the collective? So as these elements give rise to one another, they need one another to function, and the health of one element then spills into the next. Um, and so if there's too much happening in one element, then that begins to tax on the other phases. And I use those terms interchangeably, phases and elements. They essentially mean the same thing. The only difference is that when you think of a phase, you're looking at it in the cyclical system, whereas element tends to refer more to the distinct um, qualities of each element. Um, so, for instance, when the fire is overactive, it begins to eat the earth, and then the earth is unable to nourish the metal. Metal is unable to nourish the water, and then it's this cycle of yeah, not a lot of great. We want to then reverse that. Is knowing this and identifying this, we need to reverse it or to use the control cycle, which we'll mention shortly. Um, so when something is out of balance, it can be either excessive or deficient. And these would be some qualities that people would be experiencing or feeling if they were balanced in the different aspects, or if they were excessive or deficient. And this is the form that I use in my aromatherapy coaching to figure out which elements people are deficient or excessive in, and then we work on identifying the essential oils that would best help to adjust these imbalances um, in their psycho-emotional state. So things to help that balance would be the controlling cycle. And this is how the elements control or restrain one another. And there are some kind of examples for this in nature. For example, fire restraining metal. Fire can literally melt metal, right? Earth restraining water, thinking of sandbags that prevent flooding. Metal can chop down wood if it's getting too big. Um, Water can put out fire if it's consuming everything. And then wood restraining the earth, thinking of roots preventing erosion and such. And that brings us back to this model. And so now we're familiar with the different qualities of these elements and how they interact with one another. Let's plug in the IKIGAI again. So giving this field, I gave this field to the wood element, right? Creating abundance has a very wood quality about it. What I love to do speaks to joy and enjoyment and intimacy, very fire. What I am good at definitely has something about concentrating and eliminating distractions. And what the world needs has that quality of the collective and rest and return. And the center, of course, is that purpose, that sense of purpose, that ikigai. So what's the difference between these two models? What this one proposes is that to reach ikigai, we need to navigate through these different spheres and then finally find our way to the center, which would solve everything and which would fulfill us, right? So it's this desire to reach the center where we'll finally be fulfilled and we'll be able to avoid these traps of life, right? What this model then proposes is that these different aspects of our life are mutually dependent on one another. They're independent. They are codependent, not codependent, interdependent. Yes, interdependent on one another. And the health of one thing affects the health of another, right? And this also considers that life purpose as not as something that you must land on, but is something that is distinct in itself that also must be nurtured, just as importantly as looking at the different parts of it. So I decided to rename these, simplify it, right? The wood can be wealth, fire, enjoyment, metal, expertise, and service as the water, and purpose, that ikigai, that earth, that center of transformation. And similarly, we can look at this as a cycle that nourishes one another. So when you have wealth, you're able to enjoy life more. When you are enjoying life, that can nourish your sense of purpose. When you are squarely in your purpose, that can motivate you to increase your expertise. When you feel like you are an expert in the field and you're able to concentrate on your work, that increases the amount of value that you're able to give to others. When you're giving value to others, then that can nourish your wealth and so on. So it's this cycle that helps one another rather than displaces or cuts off things from one another. And similarly, we can use the control cycle to understand this a little better. Without service, enjoyment suffers. Without wealth, your sense of purpose you begin to doubt your sense of purpose. If you're not enjoying something, then it's hard to really focus your expertise on it. If you're if you don't have a sense of purpose, then the things that you do for others has no meaning to land on. And if you're not very good at something, then that may not be very good for building your wealth. Uh, and similarly, if too much focus is being put on any of these spheres, then that begins to tax all of the other spheres of life, right? So if I'm only doing what I enjoy and love, only doing fire activity, then that enjoyment will begin to overshadow my purpose. If I'm losing my purpose, then that's going to reduce my expertise, and expertise undernourishing what I'm able to give to the world. And if I'm not able to give to the world, then I am going to lose my wealth. And so then we can use yes, the control cycle to balance it out. Um, so way to look at this would be if so back to this, if the let's see, if the wealth is suffering, then what we would need to do is increase the amount of focus and attention that we put into our expertise. So increasing the controlling factor would help a deficient um, phase. I hope that makes sense. And we can go over that again if people have questions. Um, So yes, that brings us back to this model of a balanced sense of purpose using the traditional Chinese and East Asian perspective medicine and cosmology. And I think I'm happy that I get to share this at this time. As the world is transforming and as we are trying to find our footing in a constantly moving state. And I hope that this can be of a tool for you to have some clarity and something to reflect on to for yourself, for your business, and for the people in your life. And thank you. Questions and yes. Thank you.
This was awesome. I love the interpretation that you bring to it, and I think that that original Ikigai chart is very useful. I think it gets people's attention, but to your point, it doesn't really look at the interconnectedness, and that holistic approach that you have is much more. I think it just allows for more introspection about what may be feeling out of balance at any point. And right now, maybe a lot of those circles are feeling out of balance for people. So I wanted to thank you for bringing that new light to it. Yes. Folks, if you have questions, you're able to unmute yourselves, and you can also include your questions in the chat box. While you are reflecting on this and thinking about these questions, I wanted to ask Kiam about in your practice, as you meet with people, whether it's through body work or through this one-on-one holistic coaching, what are you finding about where people are feeling stuck? Are there any common themes?
Yeah, where people, I notice, at least the people that come to me, have a starting point on, though, is the knowledge that they must choose themselves first. I think this tends to be where people either begin from or are trying to get to in their journeys. So the people that come to me, I feel, have either begun to choose themselves and say, you know what, I am worth the time and the effort and the investment. My health is a priority. And so taking that step to see me, I know that they've begun to make that decision. So that's where people start. Now, where they tend to be stuck, I think it's so different for every person. I try to think of something that connected the different needs and experiences, but really, I think what connects them is that starting point, less so than where they're getting stuck. Where they're getting stuck is so different for each person that's part of what I enjoy, is helping them figure out where that is exactly. So I hope that I answered it in a roundabout way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I have to say that even though you said that this was your first kind of presentation online, I thought it was beautiful. The graphics that you had were just visually just captivating. And I'm sorry I interrupted during that earlier portion.
Oh, no, not at all.
And then of course I realized, oh, okay, this is part of the explanation. This makes sense.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to ask something a little more related to your experience. I think where you are now as an artist, as a performer, but also as a coach, is drawn from your personal experience, and you explained that a little bit. For those of us who are navigating those types of challenges in our lives, where we're feeling like we're not really living an aligned profession or life or purpose to who we feel we need to show up as. You mentioned like the first point of inquiry in the clients that you see, but in your personal life, what helped you kind of say, you know what, this is not who I am, even though I've enjoyed doing all these things. Here's where I want to go next. What were there milestones or key points in your personal journey that just kind of clarified that for you?
Yeah, there's so many. And like every day is another download, another realization, and an affirmation and confirmation of where I am and where I need to be. I think for me, So I was speaking earlier about the different densities, right? From physical to mental to emotional and spiritual. What worked for me is working my way top down. So I reconciled my relationship to spirit. I assessed what it was that I was raised with and what part of the Catholic religion um, still resonates with me, and figuring out how to make that work with what I've learned through yoga and meditation and my own spiritual inquiry. So I really worked on developing my relationship to source, and by that I mean this. By that I mean to life itself. So I reconnected to that feeling and that desire and that will to live. That was foundational,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of us, and and I say this from experience, a lot of us live our lives um, not fully committed to being alive. We're only committing to the act of living rather than the actual being. And once I understood that, it set me to choose myself. And that was a slow process of daily making choices in which I said, my experience is worth it and who I am is valuable and necessary. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And trusting that, trusting that, and living my life daily with that understanding that I matter, that I am a part of something divine and beautiful that I don't even have words for. I don't even have experiences for. I can have many, many theories for, but the way that it shows itself to be real is through experiencing it. Um, so I think beginning for me, that really helped to begin with my relationship to spirit. And then with that, I began to look at my emotions and how I manage my emotions. And from that, I worked on ordering my thoughts and how I use time and how I communicate. And then now I'm moving into really nourishing my body. So that's kind of where I've developed my healing process, thinking through those different levels of density. So I hope that helps.
Yes, absolutely. This might tie into one of the questions that came in
Mm.
from Jessica. Where should we start when trying to find our balance or attain ikigai?
Mm. I think, yeah, checking out those four, like thinking of those four spheres is a really simple way to go about it, right? Looking at what are the, even just making a list of what are the things that you enjoy, what are the things that bring you money or abundance or sufficiency. Sufficiency is a great word that I'd like to kind of offer in place of abundance. Sufficiency meaning there is enough, and there is enough for everybody, whereas abundance can tend to mean there's so much that it's in excess, right? So I like to think of wealth as sufficiency. But maybe listing the different things and figuring out how these different spheres of life are operating for you: your wealth, your enjoyment of life, your expertise, and your service, and really looking at those as different fields that intersect and support one another. So that's if you want to do that distinct ikigai framework assessment, right? Um, but on a more personal level, where to begin? I think breathing. And it seems so simple, but it's really the key. It's the key to our experience. It's there's a spiritual teacher, Matt Kahn, who said, all you really truly are is the breath having an experience. So I've been thinking a lot about that, especially now with the coronavirus being so focused on a lot of the symptoms that people are feeling are in the destruction of the lungs, um, and and how often we take that for granted, our ability to breathe as such so necessary to our experience, and how 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 we tend to just take that for granted. And I think too, when we tune in to our breath, when we get to know our breath, we can begin to know, really deeply know ourselves. um, and a simple exercise I can share for that would be just to really pay attention to how you're breathing and where it's going into your body. So on an inhale, feeling your whole body expanding and imagining that breath being delivered to all of your cells, right? You are breathing as one being, just as the earth is existing as one being. I believe I see humans as a smaller fractal of that same system. Um, and returning to the breath can connects us to our emotions, to our thoughts, and of course to our bodies. So yes, beginning with the breath and learning how to slow the breath down, how to feel every part of that breath. Um, and actually, I think I'd like to. Can I lead you all on just? Can we just breathe together for a couple cycles? I think I definitely need it, and I'm sure we all do.
Absolutely. If anyone has any objections to that, please let us know.
Yes, and this also relates to the other question that I see on here about morning practice. I definitely begin with breathing and meditation, and I've begun to also do chanting along with that. So yes, let's take some breaths together. So first, I invite you to settle in into where you are, who you are, exactly as you are right now, and close your eyes if that feels comfortable. And feel your body from your toes all the way up. Your entire body is here with you. Body, mind, the waves of your emotion rising up and down like tides, like waves on the water. They were always there, they will always be there, but we can also ask them to calm to a slow and gentle pace. And tuning into our spirit, the part of us that's indestructible, the part of us that's connected to all. And rest in that. And we'll inhale deeply, filling up our bodies. And hold that end of the inhalation. So hold your breath here for a moment and feel what it feels like to have a full breath in the body. And imagine all of that oxygen being delivered to your cells, to your muscles, to the blood. And then you exhale, slowly releasing all of the tensions, all of the worries, all of the vibrational energies unnecessary at this time, letting them go into the earth, into the air. And we'll inhale again, connecting to the core of the earth, our body with the earth's body. And as we exhale, we connect with the sun above all of the clouds, above the weather, to pure source consciousness. And then inhale one more time, filling the body with this energy, with this light, with this love, holding your breath at that inhalation, really feeding and nourishing all of our being. And then exhaling, releasing and giving that back to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiam. Wow. That was wonderful. I'm going to